Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 134 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to build the requesting stations for the new science setup, and by association, we'll be able to see how the dynamic loading station works with the circuits. Enjoy. It would be such a shame to have all of this space and then smash everything really close together. So how about we kind of put it down here, just like on the bottom side of this road right here, because the rail is there, and I don't, there's no point in building a second whole rail system if we've already got one right here. But we'll move it down as reasonably far as we can and then landfill what we need to. So it would look kind of like this. It would go in here somewhere, and we'd have to do lots of landfill and whatnot. But it's looking like something like this for what we need to clear out. And then we'll figure out where the bus goes in a little bit. Let's see. Let's place it up high enough to where we can at least connect the wires. And we'll go with that. How's that going to look? Yeah, it seems pretty good. Because it'll be similar to before, where it starts high and then goes down. And it looks like we're probably going to need a bunch of bridges to get this taken care of. Look at all the trains flying by. Uh-oh. I hadn't noticed that the factory ran completely out of power overnight. That's a pretty terrible satisfaction rate. So is it just doing what it can? Pretty much. Everything's going that can go. So we could add more power processing or more accumulators, because our accumulators right now are based on the current solar panel output, but we have many more sources of power than those solar panels. So we could probably get by with more accumulators. Of course, we already are taking up a huge amount of space, but I mean, who's to say we can't just add more? Just put more accumulators in there. So let's try that before we upgrade the power. I'm pretty sure we're at the point where we do need to upgrade power. We might be able to avoid it with some more accumulators. It's funny that having night vision, I didn't even notice that the factory is completely out of power, because it all looked fine to me. I only noticed when I went up there and saw that the Nixie lights were off. I'm like, that's not good. Something's wrong. Now, at a point in the past, I was producing more accumulators, but then I stopped because we were producing the inefficient resources to make them. Like, we had nickel overload, and in fact, we have a lot of nickel here already, 34,000. I guess we could just completely bypass all of this stuff and just have 2 more request depots. We don't even need nickel for anything. We do need a tiny bit of silicon, but we might be able to just leave this in the system and see if it is enough. But we just need to get tin and lead here. So let's see if we can do that. So a lot of stuff's going to get shut off here. Let's just unhook these 2. Let it go through what it can. And then we have more resources to get in here. So 2 more requests. We probably need a whole lot of drones. I don't know. How many drones do we have on these iron and copper deliveries? 20 each? Seems like a lot for tin and lead, but that's what's there before, so we'll do that again. But let's see. We'll do lead on that side, tin on this side. So we will request lead. 20 drones. And request tin. 20 drones. And then we can limit these warehouses to some reasonable amount. So let's say it's on if there's less than... I mean, it really doesn't need to be that much, but let's just say 1,000. We'll have to move all that nickel later. Looks like power... See, that's why I'm thinking that our accumulators aren't enough, because You know, it's only halfway through the day, a little bit more than halfway, but our accumulator charge is way more than a little bit past halfway. So I'm thinking if we had twice as many accumulators, it would probably be much more balanced towards our factory's power output when you consider all of the byproducts that we're burning away. Now we've got a bunch of nickel that we need to put in the system, but we're already at 80,000 for all of that nickel, so do we really want to do that? Not really. So we'll just dump what we have into the system for now, and we'll have to worry about that nickel some other time. Basically, once we start using it, hopefully in a little bit, once we've got these train stations set up, we'll start using all that nickel to make Invar. But for now, we need to set up some supply depots, and we can do it nearby this other stuff here. Just off to the side, getting loaded. And I think we had like this set to 10,000 or something like that. Fairly high number. So we'll do the same thing. Get that set up, and eventually that should start delivering those resources to the bus. So now we have completely bypassed the ore sorting part of the original bus here. I'm fine leaving all those machines just in place, because I don't want to pick through there and find exactly which machines we can get rid of and which ones we can't. When we replace that setup, we're just going to remove absolutely everything, so it'll be easier, less thinking later on if we wait. Well, because of that, we can turn on accumulator production again. We think we had a decent amount of accumulators. Yeah, 2.1k already. I think this is more or less the maximum output of the factory, at least at the time. I'm sure we can get by with more now, but, well, the sun's going down. But I guess it kind of doesn't matter because the accumulator's already charged. But let's place what we can get away with. And I guess we'll just keep extending it over, or at least to make it a square. Okay, it looks like in the meantime the ores have arrived and are now being used, completely bypassing our old sorting setup. We'll just leave all that in place for now. But now we can use a bunch of lead to make these batteries without worrying about all that extra nickel we'd be making, because it's significant. So now we need to request all of our resources here. It'll be fun to see both of these working, especially knowing that some of them will be coming from the circuit bus here, and it looks like they've all caught up and they're ready to supply circuits. So we need to get all these ready to go, and we need to put the LTN combinator in there, but remember, at the second it gets placed, turn it off so we don't make all these requests. And the settings are the same. It's an 8, so that's okay. So negative 256 for all of them. So we got 3 more slots on this station, and we got 3 more metals. Let's do brass, steel, and Invar. As far as the networks this needs to work on, it's all just metals, so on the coil network. And we'll leave it off because I want to turn it all on pretty much at the same time. So you have to place this one here. So make another one. Place it, hurry up, turn it off. And we need both types of brown circuits. Although, looking at this, we needed to make 2 requests for Invar as opposed to the 1, because it's more than 30 items a second, and these warehouses are kind of built in such a way that it's meant for 30 items. So let's take brass off. We'll put steel back on, negative 256. And then for Invar, because we need so much of it, we'll actually do negative 512. And it's going to go through 2 warehouses. So it has a higher buffer capacity, and it will have 2 belts of output instead of the 1. Which means we need both types of circuits, brass and carbon. Negative 256. And the networks for this is the metal network carbon network, and the circuit network. That should be good. So let's flip the switch on these settings here. Get that on the network. It looks like it is available. So when we flip the switches on the requesting stations, a whole bunch of stuff should happen. Then we'll have to rush back up there to circuits and get there before things start so we can see it happen. So here we go. Flipping switches and driving fast. Uh-oh. Didn't get there in time. Well, kind of. Okay. So it gets here. The signal comes through to say, hey, I want these circuit boards. So they start getting sent down. Train's getting loaded with fuel. Then when it makes it down to the train, loading starts. Now you can see the numbers happening in real time here, where this is the capacity of the warehouse, obviously going down because it's unloading much faster than it's loading. The number on the bottom is covered up by the wire a little bit, but the number on the bottom is the request. It's not 32,000, which is the size of the train. It's a couple stacks less, 4 stacks less in fact, because limit slots selection enabled. So it's intentionally using 1 less slot per wagon, and then a number at the top is the amount that has been delivered. And you can see how the first ones are green, they're letting the resources through, and then the second ones are scanning how many resources are going through. And then all the counting equipment is occurring. It just makes it down here, makes it in here, and it's not fully populating these belts because it's only 6 belts worth instead of 8. And I see we have a error for no Invar plate, but that's probably because it wants 2 trains worth of Invar plates, but we only have the 1 train, so it's complaining that the resources aren't available. Since this is a dynamic station that has to load many trains, it's going to load much faster than the other train stations, so it should definitely get there first. Almost loaded here. So when it reaches the specified amount, it stops, and it hit it exactly just out of luck, but there was no buildup there. It just stops. All the resources make it to the train. And the train is 1 short of being completely full. So the inserters are completely clean. Now the train leaves, the signal is lost because it no longer has to count. The next train comes in. The request comes through. It's for these circuits. Here's the request number, and counting begins. Meanwhile, this warehouse is trying to recover. So it's pretty cool. I really like it. It's running solely on belts, so certainly with bots, you could make a much more compact loading station that can handle a great number of resources. It's just, when you want high throughput and you're using belts, there's a limit to how much stuff that you can move in a certain area. So we have to deal with this. But later on, when we have belts, we'll be able to do a station that can move even more resources than that with really no compromises. It'll still work the same way. It'll have the same counters and everything else. It's just it's using bots to move stuff around instead of all of these sorting warehouses and loaders. So under normal circumstances, it won't necessarily load the exact number of resources. But something tells me the reason why it did is because this request is a multiple of 12, since each belt has 2 sides and there's 6 belts, then that means that the minimum amount of resources that it can move per click is 12 resources. So let's see if I am correct about this. Or 31200 divided by 12. Yep, it's an even number with no decimal. So that's why when it delivered those resources, it did so perfectly. That is not what it would normally do if the request wasn't a multiple of 12 like that. It would deliver slightly more, and that's fine. That's what we have the locked slot for. Now I wonder if we had 32,000, if it was a full train, is that divisible by 12? It is not, so that's funny. So if we're like, oh look, it's an even number, let's just load the full train, we don't have to worry about all this counting. Well, it doesn't work. You'll have leftovers, and you'll have a couple of inserters holding on to resources, and then you'll have problems. So it's just by blind luck that this number we picked works out for this. So you definitely want to have those lock slots in there, and this is about to be emptied here. And still complaining about Invar. I'll have to make sure that it's actually getting loaded. It almost certainly is. But let's take this train down to the station. And it just occurred to me that the trains have nowhere to go once they've unloaded, because I didn't connect the rails anywhere. So they're all going to be stuck. So we're definitely going to have to connect the rails. Well, train got here. The others have not yet. Is Invar being loaded? Oh yeah, it's totally being loaded. It's just it's complaining because it wants 2 trains worth of deliveries, but it only has 1 available. Just because of the quantity that was requested. Luckily, having all the trains clogged isn't actually going to cause a problem because they all have parking spaces, so it's actually not an issue. It's just kind of funny. They're all coming in and everything's going to be clogged. Well, we need to get a roundabout in here. We'll go right about here. Alright, well, trains probably aren't going to like this, but let's pick everything up here. Let's get this roundabout in here. And there they go. The trains are like, thank goodness, you gave me a path again. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That our power satisfaction is still insufficient. But notice though, we almost got to the end of the night this time. But that's why those belts weren't completely full. It's because we didn't have electrical power. But looks like all the trains made it. And we have an Invar train sitting right here with Invar ready to go. But because these trains aren't linked to a specific station, we have another Invar train right here getting loaded because this station finished its previous loading, and now the next Invar train is here. So potentially you could have several trains of the same product trying to move stuff in, and that's essentially what would happen because we're essentially asking for 2 warehouses of Invar, so we'll need 2 trains for that. Yep, trains unloaded at the same time. Well, because we're making all this Invar, does that mean we're not overloaded on nickel now? Which would be really nice. Let's check. Kind of. It looks like it's, oh man. Yeah. Notice how there's no red lights. So actually, we are not overloaded on anything anymore. It's operating as best it can. It's just the power is woefully insufficient here. I mean, the factory wasn't really designed to power itself in real time. It happens in spikes, so it definitely was designed to use the accumulators. But that said, the factory is kind of weak, and it's going to take a long time to make all of those accumulators. So I'm wondering if we really want to wait for them all to be made, because it's a slow process. See, we have 516 right now, and we probably need another 10,000. So, I'm wondering if we should upgrade power production. And one thing we can do is make some heat pipes, so we can do heat pipe power. Just requires steel and copper, and that's something that we have. It's kind of frustrating that we're doing research and we're just about to build a new researching setup, but we've got a problem with power that we have to fix. And then from there, we can do burner heat source, which requires INVAR, which we have. These are similar to how nuclear reactors work, where there is a neighbor bonus. If you stick a bunch of them together, you can get a huge increase in efficiency to the power that these create. So we're definitely going to want to do that and build some nice setups. But the first step is making the heat, burning something and making heat. So we'll grab that. And there's a fluid burning version as well. I don't know if we're going to want to go through the effort of converting all of the byproduct burners this way as well. But hey, it's all part of the same technology tree, so let's grab it. And then we'll need a heat exchanger to change that into steam. But we have to go back a little bit and research zinc processing. I didn't want to research it yet just because we didn't really need it for anything, but I guess now we do. It'll make those brass gear wheels, which is a component that goes into stuff, and brass pipes, which from a technology standpoint has the same stats as plastic pipes. So they're tier 3 pipes. Plastic pipes we have more of right now, so it's probably better to use plastic, but hey, these are available as well. And the brass chest, which is bigger than steel chests. So that's a nice little upgrade. And then this is where we have to be careful about following technology around because, hey, we could upgrade our electric poles. But do we really want to be upgrading all this stuff when we're just going to have to handcraft the upgrades when, you know, it'd be much easier to research this stuff after we're building the bus and can make all these new items on the bus? So, yeah, I think we should hold off on a little bit there. So let's go back to heat exchanger here. And let's follow this back. That now we have INVAR and brass pipes. We can do boiler 3, which is just the more efficient version of the boilers that we already have, which is nice. Although if we're replacing them, it won't matter. But we'll grab it. And then that gives us access to the heat exchanger version, which will take the heat from the heat burners and turn it into steam. And then after that, they just go into a steam engine, like anything else. So it's a 3-step process rather than a 2-step process. And now that we did those other researches, we also have access to Steam Engine 3, which requires those brass items and steel bearings. We could just drop in place and upgrade the setup, but it's probably better to build out these burner heat sources and just rebuild everything. It'll be much more efficient that way, because it's going to take too long if we want to wait on all of those accumulators to be made, because it's going to take a long time. It's just the output isn't very high. And we could build it up, I suppose, but I mean, it's limited by plastic, I think. It's like, we only have so much plastic, so. But, you know, sun's coming up. Power's being replenished. So it seems like just a couple more accumulators and we'd be fine anyway, but I think it's time for us to upgrade our power output because our factory is going to have huge spurts to it now, where every time one of these trains runs, it's just a whole bunch of processes just turn on. And we're going to need to have a lot of power to be able to keep up with that. But this is pretty cool to see. Now 2 stations side by side operating. I wonder if the second INVAR train is going to get here before the first one unloads. And then is INVAR train number 3 going to get here? So again, let's now that we have some light, let's see what's going on with sorting. See, we got some red lights again. Looks like it's nickel again that got filled up. But one cool thing to note is it looks like we're good on silicon now, that we actually caught up. Hey, there's another one. There's the INVAR. It must be because the previous train just finished loading, so now the next one's coming. So yeah, we're going to have 3 INVAR trains en route. Hey, it works. And yep, there's the 2 INVAR trains right there. But we probably maxed out on nickel again because we're producing all of that silicon. Because that's kind of why we've been so hard on silicon, is because nickel is the byproduct. And that was causing issues. But now that it's full, nickel should be being reduced. And yeah, the red light's turned off again because the next train came in and it's using up nickel again. Slowly. It's just inching through it. It's not using it that much. I mean, it definitely a decent amount of it goes into steel, but not that much goes into steel. So we just have to use what we can. Everything's looking pretty good. Looks like these trains finally filled up the station. And now they're emptying out the extra resources that they had on hand. Pretty good. Meanwhile, this one has reached equilibrium. And it's about half full, going through all of the stuff that we've delivered there. So how are we doing on accumulator charge? Actually, not that great, because accumulators are actually supplying power right now, that we have all of the solar panels doing everything they can, and accumulators are actually having to help. So this next night might be even worse than the last one. Well, let's hope we can get all this research done first. At least I have night vision, so even if all the power's off, it doesn't matter, I can still see. The day will come. So when you have two different warehouses hooked up, they just get loaded equally with the input, and in the event that one of them gets used more than the other and the bus didn't use these resources evenly, that's fine. It's just it will back up through one of these sets of belts here to the warehouse, and then it'll just put everything in the second one. So it won't cause a problem if you don't use the resources exactly evenly. And I notice we're not putting anything in here. That's because that's the tinned wire coil, which we are still waiting on. Right down there. Actually, another thing I wonder is, do we have solar panel 2 that we can upgrade? Probably can, because we have access to silver. Okay, we could make them, but unfortunately it's blue science, so we're gonna have to wait on that. Yeah, that last Invar train's going to be there for quite some time, because it's all the way to the bottom. Now it's just waiting as resources are created in real time. Not to mention that a lot of the resources are being sent to steel here as well. So there's just a huge iron shortage right now, as you can see. I mean, iron is working as fast as it can, but there's only so much of it. And we're using all of it. Making all of it and using all of it. So that's the best we can expect. So we'll just have to give the factory time to catch up. Plus, this is another worst case scenario that would probably never happen in practice, because we're loading up 2 large dynamic stations full of resources. So when the factory is normally running smoothly, as you've seen by the LTN requests, even though we're actively producing resources here, you know, only one train every once in a while actually goes through there. I wonder if I have some radars on hand. Probably should place these around here so we can see what's happening. And train unloaded. So the station's caught up. And it'll get through all of those resources eventually. Man, this night's gonna be bad. The sun's just going down and there's almost no accumulator charge at all. We could probably set this up in a way to run the normal fuel burners a little more aggressively, but I don't think that's necessary because we just caught up with all that research and now we can upgrade it. But that's gonna have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.